I work as a software developer for a financial institution, so I guess I get to do a lot of fun with the R, Python, and pretty much anything out there. I'm working a lot with RPA solutions, so pretty much anything that might be useful for me, I can pretty much go that way. So yes, the talk today is about plotting in Python. And we're going to talk a little bit about Matplotlib. And I did not know the seaborn part. That's the only thing. But I am going to talk a little bit about altair. Yeah, so hopefully we're all good with that. Okay, so then usually we're going to start with creating. Everybody have a Python notebooks on your machine? Yes, we're ready to go. Okay. Okay, so then I'm just going to create two variables in here, right? And I'm just going to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just want to create A and B here so that we can have some data to work with, okay? And then this one, just to make it a little bit more exciting, going to make it a little bit different. 5, 3, and 5. So then all of a sudden you come and you have these two. Obviously, when we look at our data sets, or we have the data that we're working with, right, obviously they're going to be very big, right? You're going to have all these probably like Excel sheets. So with all this information, you have to make sense of it, right? So then one thing that I do, for example, right, I might go into like a Hadoop cluster and just try to bring something down, right? And I might want to use it in R or in Python, right? But I usually always start with something very small like this, just to get like my proof of concept going, right? And then when I know it works, right, then obviously I just scale it up, right? So then let's say I'm gonna import a Matplotlib because I want to see what my data looks like, right? Matplotlib, I'm gonna use a pyplot. And then I'm going to do something very simple, for example. I'm just going to say plot A, B, and then oh, typo. Okay, so then we go in and we get this. One of the nice things about Matplotlib is that Matplotlib is obviously an awesome library, right? And it's very strong, I would say, but like sometimes you need to put a lot of details into what it is that you're doing, right? So here comes our first obstacle, right? So usually you go in and you come in and you just put this line here, and you're going to say that you want everything in Matplotlib to come in line within your notebook here, right? So just by adding this, I avoid getting this, obviously, because this would be more or less the same idea as this is the object of what it is showing me right now. So yes, we can see, obviously, with the little amount of data that we have here, right? That's fairly simple. But like, let's say we have 100 lines and we want to look what it is that we have here, right? Then it might be a little bit more difficult. Okay, so then yeah, it looks really nice, but like let's say we wanted, if you want me to like stop, or you want.
Oh, I was trying not to be distracted. I just have air. Yeah, I think you go.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then like let's say, for example, this, I get thrown the line, right? But like let's say I want a scatter plot, for example. I can come in here, right, and I can just go and boom. Here I have more or less like a scatter plot of what my data looks like, right? Obviously, this one's like very simple, but in other cases, probably I would have like a shotgun view of my data, right? And I would see more or less if it's more in a certain direction than in another one, right? But this would be one example, right? Let's say, for example, if I wanted to, this is just if I want to put all the points, right? Going back to our initial example, right? We come back to our line, right? And then let's say we don't like a blue, right? Let's say we like green. Then our line here that represents our data. Well, you can't really see green there, so let's change it to probably red. There you go. Yes, so you can see red a little bit better. So yeah, so I mean, all I did was change the colors here, right? You can go in Matplotlib and you'll have like all these different codes for the different colors. Let's say if you want like the little dots and whatnot, you'll have like triangles, you have squares. Like it all depends on what it is that you like. You'll find like a option for any of these in there, right? But like, let's say you need to show this graph to somebody, right? If you just show it like this, they won't know what it is, right? So then, for example, we would go in and we would say something like, let's see, x table. Let's say these are the amount of I don't know, coins I have in my pocket or something. And then there you go. Usually, let's see. Okay, there. We got rid of the object that we're getting up here at the top. But like, okay. The only part that I added right now was I added a next label. That would mean that I'm adding a label here on my x-axis, right? So I'm saying here on my x-axis that what I have here are coins, right? And all I did at the end over here was I added that I wanted the plot to be shown, right? And then at the same time, I can go and I can say plot y label. And we can say that these are the amount of I don't know, jars that I have, right? And there we go. So now we added an X label and a Y label. Then, like, let's say we might want to add a title, right? We want to add a title, then we go okay. Then we start building our graph here, right? And we only started with this little amount of data. So now that we know it works, right, we can obviously throw like a lot more data into it, right? And then we'll know that we will follow along more or less this path, right? So yes, this would be very nice, but like, let's see. Has anybody used anything like this before? Yeah. I mean, we can do it more or less in Excel, but like we're doing it the Python way in Matplotlib. We can also go and this would be one. Let's say we want to do something like, am I going too fast or we're okay? We're good? Okay. So let's say now we're gonna go and we're gonna create figures. And you'll be able to see in a second what this means though. So we're gonna create a figure 1 and we're gonna create a subplot Okay. And then we are going to plot. We're going to plot A and B again. Okay. And this B, then okay. So then what happened here? So we came over here, and if we're just creating a regular plot with our data, it'll create just one image there of whatever it is that we want to show, right? And there were two examples that I showed. If I just come in here and if I just say a color, it'll go and it'll throw a line for me, right? If I go in and I say, let's say, for example, that I said a RO, it throws circles for me, okay? So like, let's say here, if I said a comma B and I said a RO, oh, well, what I was trying to do was something like down here. So if I throw A, B, and it'll draw the line and it'll throw the dots for me, right? So instead, like let's say if it's a straight line, right? We won't be able to see if there are any turns within the lines or whatnot, right? So you can actually start modifying your plots within Matplotlib in that way. But here we were only showing like one big image, right? Now down here, what we go, right, and we can add multiple figures or multiple images within one same chart, for example, right? So here I'm doing figure 1, and then down here I can do figure 2, and then that would mean that I throw one chart on top of another one. Okay, so then I come in and I do, let's see. Sorry. Okay. So I come here, right? And all of a sudden I have one image on top of another one. Okay. So I did it a little bit fancier in the way that I can name my figures, right? I can come in and here, at least in this part, right? I did the subplots, and as you can see here, I throw 3 numbers in my subplot, okay? What does a subplot mean? So the 3 numbers are the rows, the columns, and the plot number, okay? So if I have a 2 here, it means I'll have one image on top of another. Like let's say if I wanted 3 images, like probably I won't have like too many images because then they're going to be too small, okay? But then I have one image. If I have 2, that's going to be 2 images, right? Then the one on the middle, that will be the amount of columns that I want. So like let's say if I wanted 4 images in my plot here, right? I would probably have a 4 here, right? And then this is the first one, and then this will be the second plot that I'm having in there. And then I end up getting this. So all of that is just this part here. And then I can also add titles to my plots, right? So as I did in the example above, right? I just added the plot title and I said image number 1, or we can call it whatever it is that we want. And then we can add a plot title down here as well. The only thing is that then we need to start playing with our plots, because in that case, we would have a problem that the numbers here in our axis would go on top of our title for the plot underneath. So then it'll create like a salad, and we don't want that. But I mean, at least we can start naming everything like this. So then what happens, right? Let's say we don't want 2 rows, okay? Let's say we want 1 row, okay? So then I go over here and I create the same idea. So instead of being a 2 number here for the number of rows, right? I just say I want it 1. So I just want everything in 1 row, okay? Then I'm saying I want 2 columns within that row, okay? And then I'm just saying over here, I'll have image number 1 on the left and image number 2 on the right. And then I scroll down a little bit here. And then here I have the difference. Did that make sense? Yeah. Sure, sure. Sorry. So all I was doing here in these 2 examples was that I was playing with the subplot property, right? So like I said, right, it only says rows, columns, and plot, the plot number, okay? So then I just say 1, 2, 1. It says I want everything in 1 row, okay? And I want 2 columns. So then that means that if I have 2 images there, right, I'll have one next to the other one horizontally, right? Or I can have them, instead of being 1, 2, for example, this way, I can have them like this, and this would be 2, 1. So then that would be the difference, right? So that, I mean, like, that's one of the good things about Matplotlib. If you want to like go a little bit fancy with your graphs, you can do it, right? It'll be a little bit more work, but you can still do it, right? Okay, so then we go and we show it, right? We can also go and let's see, let's do another example. Okay, let's go and I'm gonna say my figure, I want it to be a plot figure. Okay, and then I'm gonna create 3 images now. Okay, so I'm gonna say AX1. I'm just gonna create like 3 variables, because this is the other thing. Like I can, as in my examples up above, right? I would just say, I was just throwing them in there, right? I can just say, instead of just throwing this one, for example, into just directly onto the canvas, I could just assign it to a variable. And then that's what we're going to do right now. I can assign it more or less to a variable, right? And then I throw it onto the canvas. So you have a little bit more control of how you throw it in there. Okay. So then let's say it's going to be add subplot. Okay. And I'm going to say 1, 3, 1. Okay. And then I'm going to copy this. Let's see. Okay, do you remember what this meant? So all I'm doing right now is I'm creating 3 subplots, okay? So as we said before, all they mean is rows, columns, and the plot number, right? So if I'm going 1, 3, 1, I'm saying I want 1 row and I want 3 plots, right? So I'm gonna put 1 plot next to the other end, okay? So then right now, all I'm doing is like, I'm just saying where my plots are going to be, okay? So then I go and, okay, so I'm gonna say AX1, or we can call it whatever we want, right? AX1 is going to be a bar graph. And I'm gonna say 10, 20, 30, for example. And I'm gonna say 3, 5, 8. Okay. AX2, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna do another horizontal a bar graph, but this one's gonna be a horizontal bar graph, right? So it's just the way I call it. We're still playing within a plot. We're doing plots still, okay? So then I'm gonna do, let's see, do this. 8, 5, 3, okay? And then AX3 equals, and okay. Right. And then we can fire it up and, oh, error. The what? Yes, you're right. Sorry. Okay, there we go. And then, looks good. We're getting there, right? So remember, if we wanted everything in 1 row, we wanted 3 columns, right? As to, we saw up here that we were creating line graphs, we were creating scatter graphs, right? But we wanted a bar graph because maybe the data that we were trying to represent, it was easier to show them in the bar graph, for example, right? So here we did a regular bar graph. Here we did our horizontal bar graph. And then over there, we just did our regular scatter plot. And then our dots that we threw in there were from the first A and B variables that we created at the beginning, okay? And then we can do other things with Matplotlib. Like let's say here, I'm showing it on screen, right? Let's say if I wanted, I could go and, let's say, I could save it with a name, and then I could send it off to somebody if I wanted. If I wanted, like in our previous examples, I could do something like put it a title. Okay, so here what I did was, since I left the title up above, the graph doesn't really know if it's like for all 3. So then what it did over here, it created like a square over my 3 graphs, right? And then this means that it's the title for each one of these. If I wanted, I could say, I could throw the titles within each and every one of these, right? And then I could also name each and every one of these plots over here. But then, like, this is the only thing about Matplotlib, right? You need to have like a lot of time, a lot of patience, right? And then you could end up with something like this, right? So I don't know if you've ever done anything like this intense in Matplotlib, but sometimes, like let's say you want to add a horizontal bar, or you want to add a vertical bar, or you wanted to add like a narrow pointing to this part of your graph and put a name and all that, right? You can do all of that in Matplotlib, but you need to be like very specific of what it is that you want to do. Where exactly you want to start your arrow, for example, where you want your arrow to end, where you want your text to go, right? What color you want your text, how big you want your text, right? So, I mean, like, you're probably going to go crazy if you want to add a lot of detail to all of this, right? But, I mean, you can do a lot of this, right? There are other examples within Python, like, let's say you mentioned that you like to use R. Okay, so there is a version of ggplot that you can use within Python, but really what it is a library that runs on top of Matplotlib. And you can use a lot of the ggplot options that you use in R. You can use them in Python, right? It's not like an exact replica, right, one-to-one, right? But you'll have most of the features in there, right? But technically what it is that it runs on top of Matplotlib. But it'll make your life a lot simpler, right? More or less, did it make sense? Yeah? So then the other example that I wanted to show was using altair. So I don't know if you want me to go into that or?
What?
Altair. It's a, excuse me?
Show it, I don't think I know what it is. So.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so what I did on my end, right, I went and I had to install it. So let's say I did conda install. Are you all using Jupyter notebooks? Yeah. Okay. So I did a conda install altair, or in, yeah. I did Vega datasets, and I imported Vega. Okay. And I can bring this up a little bit so you can see. Oh.
Make it bigger as well.
How to make it bigger?
Control Shift plus. Yeah. Okay.
So then all I'm doing is that I'm adding this library to Anaconda, and we're adding the Vega datasets because as let's say, for example, in ggplot, like you'll have all these libraries that come with it, right? And then this way, I'm pretty much doing the same thing. Like I don't know if you ever heard of the iris dataset or the empty cars dataset. Like there's a couple of datasets that come with some of the libraries. So with Altair, I found it very useful. And then I just run that, and it'll install it for me. So I mean, like within Python, I think I did a talk about this last time, right? Like there's all these libraries that will work for data visualization. Like you can do plots with you'll probably hear pandas, you'll hear a ggplot, like I mentioned. You'll have a Seaborn, and you'll have a couple other, but they all work on top of a Matplotlib, right? So it's pretty much Matplotlib doing all the data work, all the dirty work in the back. So then, well, I could say no because I already have it installed. Do you want me to? Did it work or?
It says packages not found error. Following packages are not available from current channels.
You did not enable conda add -c conda dashboard.
Oh yeah. So you could change it to
At the end, add like space -c space conda dashboard.
Conda dash forge. Dash C space Conda dash forge.
Conda forge, like this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be the other way. I mean, for me, I just found it by doing just a regular Conda install. What?
You probably have conda enabled.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then, let's see. Is it installing?
It says installing environment.
Oh, okay. It'll be a second. Okay. So then, the same way I'll wait for you.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll flash right now.
So then, the same way that I proceeded to go and run Matplotlib, right? I just come in and I import it, right? And I found that depending on what it is that you want to show at the end, right? Like, let's say, have you ever heard of a SVG images, right? So Altair, it'll make it'll bring out graphs in something called Vega. Okay, so let's say if that's an option for you to work with, right? Then Altair would be something for you. Like let's say if you want them to put your graphs, for example, on a website, you could probably want to go and use a bouquet. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but that would be another library that you use with it, right? And then okay, let's see. So I would, in my case, right, I would import Altair here. I would import Vega underscore data sets. Sets. Okay. And then I would proceed probably and import a okay. Did it work or?
Oh, my fault.
Excuse me?
That's my fault.
Oh, okay. No worries. I can wait. So like all I'm doing right now, right, is I'm just loading, right? Like here I'm just loading the library, right? And I'm loading the data that I want to load, right? And here, for example, I'm using cars. So this cars would be similar in our, it's called empty cars, okay? So then what does car have, right? So then I would do cars.columns, let's see. Okay, there. So then what kind of columns do I find within my data set, right? So then I can have information about acceleration, cylinders, miles per gallon, and all this and that, right? So then this goes back to the initial thing that I was saying, like sometimes you'll want to go and visualize your data to more or less understanding a little bit more, right? So then let's say with this library, right, I can go Alt. So everything here will start with a chart, okay? So I'm gonna do a chart about cars because that's the data set that I wanna work with, right? And I wanna say mark point. And I have all these different options, right? Like I can do a marked area, I can do a bar, a circle, a line. I can do all sorts of things here. But I'll just start with a mark point, right? And I'll encode. What exactly do I want to show here? Okay, I want to go and I want to say X, my X is going to be miles per gallon. Okay, let's say I want to see how fuel efficient these cars are. Or how much, yeah. And then let's say some people like cars that have a lot of horsepower, for example. So then I'm just gonna go here, and maybe I don't have a lot of money for gas, right? So, and then this happens. So if you see here, right, we did a little bit of a jump, right? So with Matplotlib, I was going in and I had to specify absolutely everything that I wanted within Matplotlib, right? Within Matplotlib, I would have had to say like that I wanted my lines within the graph, that I wanted my X and Y labels in there. And then Altair just comes in and throws everything at me over there.
So mine didn't auto fill in for the mark point.
Oh, okay. So this one, or
Yeah.
oh yeah. So it was a comma just to separate them, right?
Yeah, so then if you see this message, it means the renderer has not been properly enabled for the front end that you're using. But when I was typing mark point into like the tab complete, mine didn't give me the options for the different marks.
Oh, are you using Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook?
Oh,
You're using it too.
Yeah, I'm using Notebook, but
because
I'm
like,
using Python.
when I did this,
Yeah. It says on their website that there might be issues with Jupyter Notebook.
I did find some
like
inconsistencies.
because this doesn't have. Like, I think I'm missing this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
Does yours tab complete for the mark point?
I can share the notebook with you afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I did find some inconsistencies within the tutorials for this library, because like let's say these examples, right? I can say X equals something, Y equals something, and then I think it was like with very old versions of the library, right? They just had X and then they open the parentheses, right? And I tried that on my end, right, and that did not work for me. Right, but don't worry, I'll share the notebook with you afterwards, right? So then, like you can see, like I got something pretty nice without doing that much work, and this would be pretty much one of the reasons why I like ggplot, for example. Yeah, like you don't, it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. But what happens here? I scroll down a little bit more, right, and then here I see something that it's very useful for me, right? Because in Matplotlib, for example, I need to say I want to save it as something. Right? Here, I just click here. I can save it as a PNG. I can look at the source, or I can save it, or I can open it in a Vega editor. That would be something like going towards something like an SVG, right? But I mean, like it does give me the option here, right? So like, let's say if I threw this on a website, for example, I would give the person looking at the image, right? They have the option to download it, right? So I find it pretty neat, okay? So then let's go and let's create another one. So I go Alt again, and I go and I'm creating a chart. I'm creating on the cars data set. And then I'm gonna create a mark bar, okay? And I'm going to encode, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing that I did up above. Okay? And let's see, what did my data have? So here, I wanted to see like a little bit more of information about my data, right? So I wanted to see, like we already saw like how much gas our cars produce, the ones that we have on our data over here, right? And then I want to see, like, let's say the weight with the origin, okay? So I just go in and I say X equals, and then origin over here. y equals the weight in and what happens? All of a sudden I see this, right? And I'm like, okay, I can, if I'm gonna be moving cars around, for example, right? Maybe well, it depends, right? Like if I really like heavy cars, right? I might get really heavy cars from the United States, right? If I want like lighter cars, I might go with a car from Japan, right? Like maybe the sedans are not that heavy, right? If I need to move them around or whatnot, right? And then as for a fuel consumption, right? Obviously a car that weighs less might use less gas as well, right? But then again, if I go with the miles per gallon, right? I can see that if I want to save more gas, right? I don't need to go with a car that has a lot of horsepower, right? So then I'm pretty sure the Japanese cars might be somewhere down here, right? So yeah, and this is obviously another example, right, of how quickly we can go and we can plot our data within Python, right? So yeah, that was pretty much it, what I had. Hopefully you liked it. I know on the YouTube channel, there's another talk that I did probably at the beginning of the year that it talked about like a lot of different libraries that you can use within Python. And it was a little bit different than this one because like here we had the chance to start coding. So we went kind of like slow in explaining everything, right? With the other one, it was like more or less, this is it. Right, so it went by pretty fast. So yeah.